With a quiet, almost soundless sigh, one that felt like a scream caught deep inside her chest, Anya rose and walked unsteadily toward the kitchen. The restlessness within her was slowly, relentlessly, and persistently breaking apart every fragile attempt at inner peace, like a single drop of water carving its mark into solid stone. Outwardly, she remained composed, but inside her, a storm raged. Sleeplessness had settled beneath her skin, corroding her from within, leaving no trace of calm, no corner untouched by the ache of her own thoughts, which circled endlessly through everything she wished to forget. Her body obeyed the laws of silence, keeping its distance from him, avoiding every touch, as if it recognized danger in his presence, while her mind, merciful as wild, reignited every memory, every glance, and every unspoken word that echoed through her consciousness like a trauma she could not silence. And yet her heart still yearned for him, with quiet desperation, to feel the warmth of his breath against her neck, the gentle trace of his hand along her back, and that fleeting moment of peace that came only when he whispered her name. It was as if the sound of his voice alone could justify everything wrong they had ever done. But tonight, that could not happen. He was likely already lost in uneasy sleep, dulled and heavy from sedatives, and their closeness had become a luxury she could no longer allow herself. She had to quiet her mind, silence the memories that stabbed at her chest, because she feared that in one weak second she might lose control, and then everything she had tried so hard to bury would rise again and pull her under, like a tide indifferent to the shore, merciful and beyond recall. Somewhere deep inside, she longed for an invisible switch, hidden in the depths of her soul, one that could erase every image from her heart, every word Fred had ever spoken aloud, words that still pulsed within her like open wounds that never stopped burning. She wondered if a day would ever come when the past would lose its power over her every breath, when memories would no longer hold the strength to shatter her, or if she was destined to live forever beneath their weight, haunted by what once was, even when it no longer had form. She opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of cold water, twisting the cap off with trembling fingers and drinking fast, almost greedily, as if each gulp might wash away the bitter knot in her throat. Then she crossed to the counter, set the bottle down, and sat at the table, resting her head in her hands. In that quiet, fractured moment, she wondered if, from the outside, she looked as broken as she felt within. Her thoughts, relentless as ever, dragged her back into an old memory, tender and brutal all at once. A night much like this one, though still tethered to James. Her life back then had existed in parallel rhythms. On one side, the ambitious student, immersed in theory and study notes. On the other, her secret self, her sister's husband's lover, a woman hidden in the shadows, forbidden by both heart and reason. It was there, in that silence and concealment, that the story began, a story that would ultimately lead to Fred, the root of everything that had later become indelible in her heart. And now, every lesson she once thought she had learned stood powerless before the force of the memories still pulsing beneath the surface of her restraint. She had to remain steady. She had to hold on to every fragment of control she still possessed, knowing that even a single moment of weakness could reopen the door to the past and pull her back into a current from which she might never return. She sat numb in the empty student cafeteria, drained after yet another meaningless, yet somehow devastating argument with James, trying to summon the memory of the last time they had spoken without shouting and without accusations. The weight of her existence pressed down on her relentlessly, and with every breath came the sharp awareness of how hard it was to live, or more precisely, to merely exist in such a world. Well, 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 a voice rang out suddenly, bright and careless, slicing through her quiet despair. If it isn't the biggest liar I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Stevenson, just shut up, she murmured weakly, her tone betraying exhaustion and quiet surrender, though a flicker of defiance still burned in her eyes, a fight she didn't want to show. Fred's smile faded the moment he heard her voice, replaced by a concern that stirred something deep within him, something he couldn't quite name. He sat down across from her, watching in silence the face that looked nothing like the girl he remembered from lectures. Her features, usually guarded, now carried a disarming fragility that caught his attention and unsettled him, even though he knew Princess Anya would sooner die than admit she needed pity. What? She snapped, unnerved by his silence, her heart pounding with surprise that he had actually stayed. After all, they were little more than passing faces in the crowd. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, his tone calm, almost gentle, though both of them knew there had never been, and probably never would be, anything resembling friendship between them. Still, something in him refused to walk away. Something urged him to stay, to offer a moment of attention, to not leave the broken girl sitting before him alone with her thoughts. "Why do you even care to know?" she asked, her voice edged with surprise, feeling the walls she had so carefully built around herself begin to tremble beneath the weight of his curiosity. She wasn't sure why she was even talking to him, and yet, for the first time, she felt a faint urge to share something she hadn't told even to his wife and her friend Rosalie. "I have no idea," he admitted simply, his voice stripped of pretense, carrying an unexpected honesty. "But do me a favor and answer, will you? Save me from looking like a complete idiot," he added with a small grin. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt an unfamiliar calm in his presence and allowed herself to release a fraction of the tension that had been holding her captive. "Oh, I don't think anything could save you from that," she replied with a faint smile, the first genuine smile in ages, free of bitterness and blame. It was like a window flung open on a sunlit morning after a long, bleak winter, and both of them felt its warmth, the quiet proof that small mercies were still possible. "I knew you could smile," Fred said, pleased, feeling his heart react unexpectedly to the simplicity of it, without the need to analyze why it made him so unreasonably happy. "Come on, tell me what's bothering you. I promise I won't broadcast it on national television." She placed her hand on the table and let out a sigh before meeting his gaze, sincerely enough for him to see that she truly wanted to speak. "I can't believe I'm telling you this. Even Rosalie doesn't know," she said with a soft laugh, a sound that carried both heaviness and release. "My life isn't what I want it to be. If I could change it, I'd do it in a heartbeat, Frederick." He leaned back, taking in every nuance of her tone, every faint shadow across her face, realizing that for once, she needed someone who would actually listen. "You don't like your life? How's that possible?" he asked, confused and concerned, because in his eyes, she had everything, and he couldn't fathom what she thought was missing from her seemingly perfect world. "What could a girl who has everything possibly wish for, right?" she said, her voice calm but steeped in weariness. "For starters, I'd like James and me to have a conversation that doesn't turn into shouting just because I suggested dinner outside the house, or to visit my parents without my father being the biggest bastard under the sun, to not have to watch him destroy my mother's company with bad contracts. Sometimes I just want to run away, even for a day." Fred studied her face, realizing then that every human being carries their own private wars. He reached across the table and took her hand, drawing a look of startled surprise from her that quietly amused him. "Don't fall apart on me now, princess," he said softly. "You'll be fine. You just have to fight. I know you can. And when you get through it all, you'll be stronger. But why do I have to fight?" she said desperately, her gaze drifting into nothingness. "Don't I deserve a break? Don't I deserve a little joy?" She pulled her hand away and began pacing the empty cafeteria, restless, while Fred rose to follow her, unsure of the right words, but certain of his intent. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, feeling her tense body slowly soften beneath his touch as he drew her closer, both surrendering to the quiet safety of the moment. "I don't have the right words to fix your world, Anya," he said, surprised by the tenderness of the nickname. "But you're not alone. I've got my own battles. Rosalie and I, our marriage is falling apart. I know it, and I should try to save it. But something always stops me. Maybe it's duty, maybe time, maybe something I don't yet understand. But you know what? If life was easy, it would be boring. Every obstacle makes it worth living. We don't have control over everything. You, me, any of us. We're just pieces in someone else's game. And you know what? I'm glad I don't know how it ends. I like surprises, Anya. They make life bearable." She looked at him then and gave him a sincere smile, unsure whether it was his words that brought her comfort or simply the rare, quiet fact that someone had finally listened. She hated moments like this, yet at the same time she summoned them with an almost painful longing, as if they were the only proof that she was still alive. She was torn in two, stretched between the life she was supposed to live and the one she actually inhabited, no longer knowing to which of those two worlds she truly belonged. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the emptiness that seeped through the walls and pressed against her chest, from the ache she couldn't explain, not even to herself, let alone to anyone else. She reached for her phone, uncertain, as though the entire weight of the night, all her gathered thoughts and unspoken desires, had been condensed into that one simple motion. She opened her contacts, her gaze lingering on a single name, and her heart fluttered as if she had seen something sacred. Fred. Just 4 letters, yet heavier than any secret, sweeter than honey, more dangerous than any confession. She held her finger above the screen, her whole body poised on the edge of a decision, trembling at the brink of a temptation from which there could be no return. But midnight had long since passed, and with it, every real chance. It would be selfish to wake him. It would be too much. She set the phone down gently, as though even the slightest sound might expose all she was trying to hide. Yet the soft tap of plastic against wood echoed louder than it should have. She rose and left the room slowly, swallowing her own thoughts like raw sorrow, aware that she was walking away from the only weakness that still made her feel alive. This is the right thing to do, she told herself. Tomorrow will be a new day, a new chance to rise above myself, to wear a new smile, to find a new reason. But the night was always too long when waiting for what could never be spoken aloud, when desire pulsed quieter than breath, yet more persistently than any word. She paused at the doorway of her daughter's room, resting her forehead against the cold wooden frame. The silence on the other side suddenly took on shape and warmth. She pushed the door open just enough to look inside, and the sight before her pulled her gently back to life. Kai was asleep, deeply, peacefully, as though all the worries of the world ceased to exist the moment her eyes closed. Blonde strands of hair spilled across the pillow like the first light of spring, and her small chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm, steady, untroubled, and untouched by shadows. There was something sacred in that image, something no fear or thought could spoil. Anya leaned against the doorframe, silently, almost penitently, as if afraid to disturb that fragile harmony. She watched her daughter with a quiet reverence only a mother could know, pure, inexplicable, and reaching down to the bone. Her child, their child, born of love and turmoil, of fear and longing, a child who became the only proof that she had done at least one thing right, something that deserved to last. Her fingers brushed her lips unconsciously, instinctively, as though the shadow of his kiss still lingered there, as though the warmth of it had never truly faded. That taste, cinnamon, that touch had not been sin, nor mistake. It had been truth, truth she had surrendered to, if only for a moment. She stroked Kai's hair gently, kissed the crown of her head with a long, quiet kiss that felt more like a prayer than a gesture, and tucked the blanket up to her shoulders, as though even a second of cold might be too cruel. She left the door slightly ajar, just enough for the light from the hallway to guide the girl should she wake and seek her mother. She wished the child was still awake, asking endless questions, demanding her to chase her laughter through the hallways, filling every empty space with her voice and touch, because then there would be no time for memories. Then the past would stay silent. Then the heart would forget. But when night wrapped everything in stillness, when silence quivered through the walls like a cold shadow, Anya was left alone. Alone with herself, alone with what had been, and with what still burned inside her, no matter how many times she tried to extinguish it. She entered her bedroom slowly, almost solemnly, as though she was stepping not into a place of rest, but into a temple where she would have to face her own thoughts. Her mind longed to deceive itself. Her body begged for sleep. Every cell ached with the fatigue of the day, but her brain no longer remembered what rest meant. She lay on her side, her head sinking into the pillow, eyes squeezed shut with determination, as if sheer force could lock her thoughts away in darkness. She pulled the blanket tight around her, as though it might shield her from her own mind, searching in the blackness for even the illusion of peace. But the moment her eyelids fell, he appeared. James, like a shadow that never truly leaves. Her body jerked, as if touched from within, though the room remained empty. Why him? Why now? Hadn't she locked him away in the deepest, darkest chamber of her memory? Hadn't she sworn never to let him live again in her mind? And yet he was there, intimate as breath and stubborn as shadow. She opened her eyes, inhaling the darkness, then closed them again, fiercely, trying to banish him by sheer will. But the image stayed, clearer, sharper, more painful than ever. His face, his gaze that dissolved her walls, the voice that cut through every defense, the shadow beneath his eyes, the scent of his skin, the silence between words louder than any shout. Everything was there, indelible and merciless. She turned toward the window, seeking refuge in the outer darkness, but the sky was sealed, veiled in clouds that denied even a sliver of moonlight, as if the world itself had conspired against her. She felt her mind surrendering, cracks forming through the ice she had spent years building, the memory she had turned her back on, breaking through, stronger and fiercer than ever. It had never been just sin, nor mere weakness. It had been a moment that should never have happened, and yet it had. And time had not helped. Silence had not erased it. Nothing, absolutely nothing, had helped. It was already dawn when her phone buzzed on the nightstand, sharp and persistent, as if its sole purpose was to sever the final threads of her sleep. She reached for it blindly, eyes still closed, convinced for a moment it might be Fred. And if it was, she was ready to give him a piece of her mind, because Fred always seemed like the kind of man who believed only his time mattered, as though other people's hours and dreams didn't exist. She didn't turn on the light. There was no need. The morning glow was already seeping through the curtains, drawing pale, delicate lines across the walls. She opened one eye and looked at the screen. The message read, "You're unrealistically beautiful," from James Livingstone. Words meant to coax a smile only made her roll her eyes and sigh bitterly. She placed the phone back on the nightstand, buried her face in the pillow, and decided she wouldn't see him, hear him, or allow even the faintest thread of connection to come alive again. The last person in the world she wanted to exchange words with was him. But persistence was his second nature. Soon, the phone buzzed again, and this time she snatched it up, irritated, ready to switch it off. "Don't ignore me, you beautiful, stubborn lunatic," read the new message. Oh, she could ignore him. She wanted to ignore him. She could ignore him for the rest of his life. Her hands itched to hurl the phone against the wall, to shatter it into 1,000 pieces, but her fingers loosened at the thought that it was her only window to the world, and her one fragile link to the outer universe. Perhaps she would change her number tomorrow, just so he'd be greeted by the cold, impersonal voice of an operator, saying that the number you have dialed is no longer in service. She could almost see his face then, surprised, disappointed, maybe even hurt, but still obstinately determined in his alcohol-fueled attempts to win her back. It was the 4th time in 7 days he had sent his rambling messages, pouring out his confused thoughts again and again. And as always, the messages were followed by calls. She ignored the first one, letting it go to voicemail. But as she lay there in the half-dark, a wicked thought flickered through her mind. What if she listened to it? Perhaps she'd even save it, just to one day, out of pure malice, play it in front of everyone at the firm, so they could all hear how Livingstone sounded when Vaca stripped him of his dignity. On the recording, his voice wavered, soaked in intoxication, drifting between drunken affection and weariness. "You know, shut up, Max, I'm talking now. You know, like, Vaca's a strange thing. It scrambles my thoughts, and all I can think about is you. I can't think about anyone else. But you're still there, right? You didn't leave because of Fred. I hate him. I don't understand what you saw in him. I don't know. Bye, Anya." She inhaled deeply, trying to clear the sediment of emotions swirling in her chest. She hated that he'd left a mark on her life. She hated that she had ever let him near. She hated that they had used each other, and that this had become their essence, their truth, however twisted and incomplete. Truth wasn't worth much when only one person believed in it, and she no longer knew which truth was hers. Then came another missed call, another voicemail. His slurred voice broke through noise and laughter, searching for her, as though she could somehow soothe him amid the chaos. "It's me again. Did you miss me? I missed you. I can't hear you, but I bet you're there. You don't have to say anything. Everyone's happy here. But I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I shouldn't be drinking. That's bad. You know that. You don't believe me? You're so warm, Anya. Your eyes are warm, and your hair, and your whole smile. Could you come and hug me? Do you think you could come and lie on me? 'Cause I need a blanket?" That was when she turned the phone off. She'd had enough of his metaphors, which rang in her ears as hollow and false. The night before, she'd been his honey. The night before that, soft. Each night, a new absurdity, a new word to grate on her nerves. She turned over, mumbling through her teeth, almost in her sleep, that he did not care about her. Then she drifted into sleep, an escape disguised as rest. Morning greeted her with a sharp cry of her alarm. She turned her phone back on and immediately saw 3 messages, one from her mother, one from Elizabeth, and, of course, one from him. She opened her mother's first. "Anya, dinner is at 6 this evening. We expect you to finally show up. We'll be waiting. Have a lovely day, sweetheart." A message full of warmth, as always, one that softened her walls and brought a flicker of calm. Then came Elizabeth's. "Hey, Anya, I found some articles about the books you were looking for. I think we can find used copies. We'll talk tonight." Simple, practical, yet thoughtful. Finally, James's. She hesitated, but opened it anyway. Sometimes, she thought, a person needs a reason to hold on to their hatred, and for months, he had been one of hers. "Anya, it's me again." This time, there was silence in the background, no laughter, no clinking glasses, no crowd. "I know you can't stand me." She silently admitted it was true. Hatred was easier to bear than admitting she had once loved him. I wanted to say, it's hard. This, speaking. It's not easy. I don't want to talk to a machine, Machines don't know. They don't know that I care, that I really care about you. Anya Woodberg, you. I love you. You're the most beautiful creature I've ever seen, and you know it. Of course you know it. You have a mirror. But I'm scared. Scared of how much I love you. Scared of how much I need you. I've never needed anyone this way. I left home at 18, lived alone. I didn't even meet Elizabeth until I was 30. Before that, it was just me. And now it's terrifying. It's terrifying to love someone so much that every day without them feels like the end of the world. Anya, end of message. She sat there, holding the phone as if the words were carved into glass, rather than fleeting sound. Some say people tell the truth when they drink. Others say alcohol merely strips away the masks, exposing what was already hidden. She listened, and she knew. The tone of his voice was real, fragile, almost frightened. And she thought that perhaps love is always, in some way, frightening. Her fingers, guided by some invisible force, found his number. When she heard his rough, sleepy voice on the other end, a smile crossed her face. You really are a hopeless case, you know that? She said, almost gently. Anya? His voice now sounded awake, trembling. The one and only. What? Are you the only one allowed to call at ridiculous hours? She teased. I didn't what? I didn't think you'd listen to my drunken voicemails, he admitted quietly. Do you even know what you said? I know. I don't know. Anya, I don't know. What do you expect? I'm sorry. James? Yes. Can you come back to London tomorrow? She asked softly. I think we have something to talk about. I'd like that, he said tenderly. Good night, James. Get some rest. Good morning, Anya. See you on Tuesday. On Tuesday, she repeated, and then ended the call, leaving only silence behind. That night, when she finally allowed sleep to claim her, everything felt easier than she had expected. The warmth of the sheets wrapped around her, holding her close, while her mind drifted through half-remembered fragments of the past. Lately, sleep had come to her as a kind of solace, gentle and quiet, a safe refuge where the borders between what was real and what was imagined softly dissolved. She didn't dream often, and when she did, the images usually slipped away at the very edge of waking, erasing themselves like footprints in sand. But the rare dreams, the ones where she saw the people she had once loved, or little Kai herself, were so vivid they left her trembling and breathless, as though she had truly lived through them. She could feel them on her skin, breathe in their scent, and carry the weight of them in her heart. And in those moments, she could no longer tell whether they were merely dreams or memories she had buried long ago and forgotten.